You know, we've all heard it a million times. Good readers make good writers. It sounds so simple, right? Like they're two sides of the same coin. But if that's really true, why do so many of us who absolutely love to read just freeze up when we're staring at a blank page? Well, it turns out there's a pretty huge gap between those two skills, and today we're going to figure out exactly why.
Does this sound familiar to you? You can fly through books, articles, you name it. But when it's your turn to actually put words on the page, the well just runs dry. It's like hitting a brick wall.
If you've ever felt that frustration, I promise you are not alone. There's a real and honestly a surprisingly wide gap between consuming words and actually producing them. So we're going to break down why that gap exists, and this is the important part, how we can build a bridge to get across it.
Okay, first things first, let's really look at the scale of this problem, because this isn't just a feeling people have. The data actually shows us just how uniquely challenging writing is. So think about it for a second. You've got the 4 core language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. If you had to put money on it, which one do you think consistently gives people the most trouble?
Well, take a look at this. These are some typical scores for international students on a major English test. You see listening, reading, speaking, all floating pretty high up there. But then look at writing. It is consistently dragging along at the bottom. And this isn't just a small dip, folks. It's a massive, consistent gap that's telling us something really important.
So what is behind that gap? Well, it really boils down to a fundamental difference in what your brain is doing. See, reading is a receptive skill. Your brain is taking in information and decoding meaning that's already there. But writing is a productive skill. You have to create that meaning from scratch, juggling not just ideas, but also structure, grammar, word choice, style, the whole shebang. You're not just understanding, you're building.
And honestly, it gets even harder from there. Think about it. When you're speaking, you have your tone of voice, your hand gestures, your facial expressions to help get your point across. With writing, the words have to do all of the heavy lifting. It demands way more structure, a more formal kind of language, and often much more complex sentences. It's just a slow, mentally draining process that uses a completely different set of mental muscles.
Okay. So writing is tough. We get it. The evidence is clear. But how in the world do we actually get better? Well, the answer isn't just to practice more. It's about finding a completely new way to approach learning itself. The key, really, is a total mindset shift. I want you to start thinking of yourself as an apprentice. You know, the great Renaissance painters didn't just practice painting in a dark room by themselves. They studied the masters who came before them. We can do the exact same thing with writing. And you don't have to take my word for it. The legendary writing instructor William Zinsser put it perfectly. He said, you learn by reading the writers you want to be, and then trying to figure out how on earth they did it. It's not about plagiarism or just copying them. It's about deconstructing their work to see how the engine runs. It's about using imitation as the first step towards your own creation. So this apprentice's journey has 4 pretty clear steps. First, there's modeling. You find your masters and you just study their work. Then you move to imitating. You actually try to replicate their techniques. Over time with practice, you start approximating their level of quality. And finally, you get to the best part, creating. That's when all that hard work pays off and you develop your very own unique style. So, how do we actually put this whole apprenticeship model into practice? Well, it breaks down really nicely into 4 clear pathways that you can start walking down today. Pathway 1 is the absolute foundation. You've got to read like a reader. This is about reading for the sheer joy and love of it. Every single book, every article you consume, it's like you're gathering raw materials. You're filling your mind with new words, new sentence structures, new ideas. I mean, you can't build a house without lumber, right? And you can't be a writer without this essential foundation. Now, pathway 2 is where the real magic starts to happen. You have to learn to read like a writer. This is a massive shift. You're no longer just a passenger enjoying the story. You're more like a mechanic, popping the hood to see how the engine works. You start asking how the author built that perfect sentence or why they chose that specific word instead of another one. You're analyzing the machinery of the text. Here is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. A regular reader just sees 2 different posters on a wall, but someone who's reading like a writer, they see the specific building blocks. They notice that a recount uses past tense and tells a story chronologically, while an exposition is built to persuade, using a totally different structure. It's like seeing the architectural blueprints behind the finished building. But of course, just analyzing isn't enough. That brings us to pathway number 3. You have to write like a writer, and that means building the habit. This is all about putting in the reps. It's about writing every single day, even when you're not inspired. It could be emails, a journal, anything. It's the sheer volume of practice that builds up that writing muscle. And this poster, well, it pretty much says it all, doesn't it? The top 3 steps to becoming a better writer. Write more, and keep writing. Look, it's not a glamorous secret, but it is the absolute unshakable truth. You just have to put in the work.
And finally, pathway number 4 brings it all full circle. You need to write like a reader. This is the absolutely crucial step of revision. It means stepping outside of your own brain for a minute and reading your work through your audience's eyes. Is this actually clear? Does this make sense to someone who isn't you? And this is so important to remember. Writing is revising. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets it right on the first try. That first draft is just for you. It's supposed to be a messy brain dump. The real craft, the real art, happens when you edit, you cut, and you polish those words until they sparkle for your reader. All right, we have covered a ton of ground here, so let's boil it all down. What are the key things you need to walk away with?
Okay, so here's your game plan. Yes, get your writing reps in every single day, but also make sure you're reading with that analytical writer's eye. And don't just study one great piece of writing, go deconstruct 10 of them. Look for the structure underneath the story. That is how you truly forge the link between being a reader and becoming a writer.
And all of this leaves us with a massive question for the future. In an age of incredibly powerful AI, what does it even mean to be a writer anymore? Is this a skill that's slowly becoming obsolete? Or is it simply evolving into something new? The art of collaborating with an AI to craft the perfect piece of text. Definitely something to think about.